And then I was wearing Joe Juddy. I'll get to him when I talk about moral stat. He had a really nice, what you would call maybe a LL Bean, a flannel shirt, really nice, and I had on my best blue jeans. And I said, well, I'm going in the city like now, and he goes, like that? See, back in my day, you didn't go in the city if you weren't dressed in a suit and shirt and tie. And I said, yeah. He says, don't come back. And I didn't. I called my buddy. We went back upstate, back to school. You grew up in a box like this, you know. So you all have, but we need more elbow room, people. That's what this is about. We're trying to expand the horizons here. And you all have done a great job. So much better than my generation did. Not without controversy within the feminist movement. What's wrong with the equality definition, second wave feminism? Well, equal to which men? Richest African American person in this country, anybody know? Oprah Winfrey.
I was going to say probably Oprah Winfrey.
She's worth $3 billion. Second richest African American in this country, Michael Jordan. Why should Oprah be equal to Michael? This woman built an empire. Michael got endorsements and he was a great athlete. Oprah started as a street reporter and built herself into a empire builder. Why should women have to equate themselves or measure themselves by men? People in the United States think feminism is a movement that aims to make women the social equals of men. Bell Hooks, an African-American feminist author, asked, which men do women want to be equal to, pointing out that there are no women and men in the abstract. When Bell Hook asks, which men do women want to be equal to, she's reminding us that there's an unconscious presumption of male privilege built right into this sort of question and demand for equality. For example, women who are socially well off wouldn't get much advantage being equals to men who are poor and in the lower class, particularly if they aren't white. So the question begs, why should a woman have to be equal to anyone other than herself? Problem two, why equal to any man, even if we can figure out which men are the ones to whom women should be equal? That way of putting it suggests that the point of feminism is somehow to get women to measure up to what men already are. Men remain the point of reference, whose lives are the lives that women would naturally want. Encouraging women to perform as their equals forces women to focus on men and addresses men's conceptions of women rather than creating and developing a woman's values about themselves. So we have this shift. The second wave, women wanted to be equal to men. What really was going on is we wanted equal access to power. But we hadn't clarified that yet. It wasn't clear enough focus. And then the third wave, we realized, why are men the focal point of women? Why shouldn't women be the focal point of women? And why shouldn't you as an individual woman be the focal point of your own self-interest and your own pursuit of happiness? Why should there be any measuring stick outside of what your self-interest and what your self-promotion is all about?
Is this self-interest measurement coming, like you said, in the third wave? That wasn't the popularity in the second?
For the most part, it is. I mean, it always has this germination, always has a seed earlier than that. But and I'll bring up a couple of ethicists that will counter what's going on now. They had a different look at it, and that was kind of set aside so we could move forward. So what Lindemann is talking about is access to power. If you qualify, you should at least have opportunity to access power. Without power, you have no power. If you qualify, if you have the capacity to fill the bill, why shouldn't you be considered for that position? Regardless of gender, gender shouldn't come into it. It should be capacity. It should be qualifications. When you all go to the four-year university, they're going to measure what they say are your qualifications to enter into school. And it should be gender-free. It should be orientation-free. It should be ethnicity-free. It's what we call, and we'll talk about this later in the semester, meritocracy. You ought to merit the reward of your capacities. This goes back to Aristotle's moral excellence. If you're the best at what you do, why shouldn't you be first violinist? Why shouldn't you be at the head of your class? Why shouldn't you ascend to your largest capacity? Anybody know who Meg Whitman is? Meg Whitman? Co-founder of, I think it's eBay. Billionaires. By the way, you've come a long way, baby. And I don't mean that in any... Wealthiest women in America. back in the day when we finally cracked Wall Street ceiling, women had to wear the traveling pantsuit with that dumb little cross black tie, trying to enter a male's world looking like a male. We've gotten beyond that. So we have the Waltons, of course they inherited that. All these women, and there are women who aren't on that. The door's open. Who wants to go through the door? Nothing is given, things are earned. You want to win a foot race, you have to win the foot race. You want an elected office, you have to have an elected office. You have to earn it. And nothing should stand in the way of your capacities to earn it. That's what the third wave's about. Access to power. If you qualify, why shouldn't you have it? There's no guarantees. Look, there's 2,000 medical seats at medical schools, and there's 20,000 people applying. 18,000 people aren't going to get in. But should you be qualified because your mother and father were doctors, or because you qualify? And it shouldn't have anything to do with gender, shouldn't have anything to do with race, shouldn't have anything to do with anything other than qualifications. That's what the third wave is about. Access based on qualifications to power. Now we're going to get to that at the end of the semester. We went through affirmative action, now we call it diversity. We realized that we broke the glass ceiling, but now we need to diversify more. Any of you have Professor Himmelhoff for Spanish? I was in on her search and interview committee. She gave a great presentation, all in Spanish. She still does a class in Spanish, right? It's the only way you're going to learn a foreign language. You immerse yourself in it. We had a fellow from Toronto, Canada, over the phone, was fluent in Spanish and French. I never had anybody do a teaching presentation over the phone. To be a full-time faculty, you have to do a live presentation. We want to see you teach. And of course he couldn't make it, so he did a live presentation over the phone. It was stellar. We sat there and we said, wow, who do we choose? And we have a gentleman who works for the school. His name is Amani Asukili. Omani is kind of the diversity person, and he's a special assistant to the president. And we looked to Amani and said, Amani, give us some help here. Diversity is important. What would you suggest? He can never decide. What would you suggest? And he said, well, positions are not just about gender. They're not just about power. They're about authority and rank, too. The president before Dr. Beard was Dr. Katherine Johnson, the only female we've had as a president. 10 years, wonderful lady. This is our second African-American president, okay? And Amani said, therefore, it's not just, most of the females, most of the faculty are females, most of the administrative people, or the staff people are female. I'm not sure how that works out with administration. I do faculty, staff, and then administration. So he said to Amani, he said, well, give us some help here. And he said, well, he said, I wouldn't be averse to a male this time, hiring a male. Okay, that was his opinion, that was his advice. We weren't compelled to do it. And we thought and thought about it, and we thought, you know, Professor Himmelhoff, just a little bit above this Toronto fellow. And so we hired Miss Himmelhoff. She's a great teacher, great teacher. Access to power. This is a power position, people. When you're a teacher, you have power, you have authority. That's why we have codes of ethics. You don't date your students, male or female. You don't do that stuff. That unbalances the balance of power. Because it's this power that we're all after. Power to regulate your own life based on your own self-interest. Now, there was some differences of opinion back in...
Wait, I have a quick question about the chart.
Hang on, let me find the right one, dear, and then I'll focus again. Where did I put Miss Lindemann? There we are. Okay, I'm sorry.
There is somebody that had 17.8 and we're above somebody that had 18.
Yeah, I just put them on there. I can include. Yeah, it might have been someone I didn't see the first time through, and I went back and included them.
I didn't know if you made those or somebody else.
No, that was my ineptness. Now, Sarah Lucia Hoagland suggests that feminism is first and foremost about women, but that characterization begs the question, what after all is a woman? So this is the second wave trying to make progress forward into the third wave. Simone de Beauvoir famously observed, one is not born but becomes a woman. Now gender, of course, biologic, but then what is a woman? Her point is that while plenty of human beings are born a female, woman is not a natural fact about them, it's a social invention. She is the other against how men define themselves. In other words, he is all things and she is not, and she exists only in relation to him. So this is the identification that gender is an important understanding, and gender aside from biology, is a learned social institution. Virginia Held from the 60s disagrees. She affirms feminine qualities as a source of personal strength and pride, thinking that a woman's moral experience as mother, attentively nurturing their children, and may serve as a better model for social relations than the contract model that the free market provides. So for her, she's exercising or emphasizing some of the female qualities that go along with motherhood. Okay? Well, that's easy to challenge. Women are equipped to deal with children. Are men equipped to deal with children? So here's a social situation. You have a newborn baby and all the ladies get together for coffee and the baby cries. And they go and they all want to hold the baby. And right in the middle of the social little interaction, the baby decides it's time to. And all the women say, oh, let me. And they want to go and change the diaper. And now Hollywood, we bring it over here and we now have the men together. And the women are out. And the baby's there. And the baby. And all the men say, I'm going to go out for a smoke break now. Seriously? You don't know how to wipe a baby's butt? I mean, really? You've been doing that yourself for how long? This is half yours biologically. You can teach men to do it. It's not difficult. It's not like women have a greater propensity for it. You've just been taught, well, that's a woman's job. Yeah, that's a woman's job. You can't breastfeed. I had 4 of them. My wife would, did I show this? I wake up and go to sleep like that. So the babies would cry in the middle of the night and Barbara would elbow me in the side and say, get up and get the baby for me. And I get up and get the baby and bring him back. She'd breastfeed him. And I go to sleep. She'd go back to sleep. When the baby was done, the baby would go back to sleep. And that's how we raised children. I couldn't breastfeed him, although Barbara was a working mom at times and she would lactate. She would save her milk. She'd have to go away. Make sure you heat it up. Cold milk is not user-friendly to a warm inside baby. And I would get up and I would feed the babies. Why not? In fact, my boys would always do this with me. And to this day, my youngest grandson, he walks around only back here. He takes his own hair. He was at the wedding. I went to a wedding this week. He's walking down the aisle like this, playing with his hair. And I thought, is that genetic? Is that genetic? His father did that the whole time he was, well, of course men are capable. Are we equipped a little differently? I suppose men's muscles in general may be a little bit stronger than women. Women have muscles. Women are athletes. Women compete. So, Virginia is criticized. She's stereotyping women as being nurturing and men are rational. Who's going to... Okay. The poetess Adrienne Rich celebrates women's compassionate nature regarding emotion as opposed to the rational nature of men as morally valuable rather than signs of weakness. That is true, and we'll get to that when we get to social justice and women in the courtroom. Jean Kazaz, remember her from our first week, thinks that feminism is not about equality and it isn't about women and it isn't about differences, it is about power. And so what is gender? It's a value, it's a norm, it's a learned social role that we have. Power and morality. Feminist ethicists produce theories about moral meaning of various kinds of legitimate relations of unequal power. This is important that you understand. Not all relations, according to the third way, are to be equal. Our relationship is unequal. Who has more power, you or me?
You.
It's the way the power system's set up. In the family, who has more power, the adult or the child? The adult does. So there are times